And
Okay, great.
everybody
We all set?
Yes, we should be all set.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I'm calling this public meeting to order in accordance with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, MGLC 131, Section 40, and the Boston Wetlands Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances, Chapter 7-1.4. The Boston Conservation Commission will hold a virtual public hearing this evening on November 6, 2024, to review the following projects to determine what conditions, if any, the commission will impose in order to protect the interests of the public and private water supply, groundwater, prevention of pollution, flood control, prevention of storm damage, protection of fisheries and land containing shellfish, and protection of wildlife habitat. This evening's hearings will be followed by a regular meeting, and in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, we are conducting this meeting online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Conservation Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Additionally, the meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please turn off your video. Members of the public may have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. For the record, I am Michael Parker, Chair of the Commission. Could staff please identify themselves?
Elena Itamari with the Environment Department.
Dee Dee Hernandez with the Environment Department.
Olia Hussein with the Environmental Department.
Great, thank you. I'll call the roll of commissioners present. Commissioner Sullivan.
John Sullivan.
Thank you. Commissioner Linay.
Amy Linay.
Commissioner Wilson.
Mike Wilson.
Commissioner Conan.
Conan Thiruvengadam.
Commissioner Richmond.
Alice Richmond.
Commissioner Herbst.
Ann Herbst.
Great, thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda this evening is notice of intent for DEP file number 0062011 and Boston file number 2024-033 from Fort Point Associates on behalf of Redgate for the proposed construction of a 6th-floor multifamily residential building with ground floor retail, stormwater management system, open space enhancements, and streetscape improvements located at 1141 Bennington Street in East Boston. Resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, coastal bank, 25-foot waterfront area, 100-foot salt marsh area, 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Commissioner Conan, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair Parker. I've not been involved in any discussions on this project. However, I am on the board of the Friends of Belle Isle Marsh. So in the interest of abundant ethical practice on the part of the commission, I'd like to recuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening, Chair Parker. My name is Katie Moniz, and I'm with Fort Point Associates. I'm joined by our project team, including Liz Bayo of Redgate and Katie Cruz of Hancock.
Okay.
This evening, thank you.
No.
This evening, we are here to respond to the thoughtful feedback provided by the Commission at the October 16th hearing, as well as additional questions that were brought to our team by the Boston Conservation Commission staff and Boston Water and Sewer in review of this application. I'll briefly tonight go through a few of these items, and then we look forward to dialoguing with the Commission. Next slide,
okay,
please.
Great.
The first item that we'd like to discuss with the Commission tonight is feedback that came from a commissioner regarding pavement within the waterfront area. And this is specific to the portion of the Austin Avenue corridor that is south of the project driveway, which you can see as the hexagon at the top right of each of the slides, down to the existing MBTA gate to the Orient Heights rail yards. This portion today in practice is a wide open area of densely packed gravel. And what we are proposing to do and proposed in our original filing was to connect the project driveway to the gate with a more narrowly defined paved surface and an associated vegetative buffer around it. We did think that the commissioner who recommended that we look at some alternatives for this certainly brought up a good point, which was, were there ways that we could achieve both MBTA's goal of being able to access their gate with the ability to try to create a little more buffer to the marsh. And so you can see on the right side of your screen here that we have made a concerted effort here to push the vast majority of this travel lane to the MBTA gate further to the northwest and to try to push as much of this as possible outside of that space. Now that reduces our overall proposed hardscape within the waterfront area by just over 1,800 square feet. And so, you know, we think this is certainly a very positive benefit. And it also opens up some other opportunities that I'll share on the next slide. By creating a little more space here, we were also able to think critically about what could we do with that increased buffer to the edge of the right-of-way. We are proposing to install a gravel filter strip along this stretch of the Austin Avenue corridor. So that would be about 260 linear feet, again, from the project driveway down to the existing MBTA gate, with a gravel filter strip, which can intercept stormwater, and a vegetated buffer strip that you can see hatched at the bottom of your screen there. We think this is helpful in both the removal of sediment and pollutant and allows for more potential infiltration in this zone. Again, we previously discussed that this area today is not served by any form of drainage on the MBTA rail yard. And so this is our opportunity to provide natural treatment here in this space, which is down gradient of the project site. Next slide, please. We were also asked by the commission about the ongoing activity right now where the existing stabilized site of the former casket company was being used for construction laydown for a contractor who works on roadway and utility projects within the city. While we were out in our site walk, there was some observable dust considerations related to the stockpiles. And so our client went back to the tenant, the contractor who was renting this site, and they've made the following enhancements to the current erosion and sedimentation control out there. Number one, and most importantly, that they had a dialogue about not having any unconsolidated soil stored on this site. With the proximity and with the work that they need to do in order to move these materials, it makes more sense for them to be storing that on another site, not here, 1141 Bennington. The remaining stockpiles that will be on site would be limited to gravel and stone material only, and they would be covered at the end of each workday. As is the practice today and going forward, continuing to cover all of the trucks that are unloading any type of equipment or material here, and adding a new line of perimeter erosion controls in place of the existing line that are in the Austin Avenue corridor. And that would be a combination of a silt sock and a silt fence barrier in that corridor. I'm going to pass it to Katie Cruz, our civil engineer for this project, and she's going to talk a little bit more about erosion and sedimentation control during the construction of the 1141 Bennington project.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the project will have an enclosed construction area, which is the green shape on the plan that you're looking at on this slide, that will have perimeter controls, silt sock, and silt fence around that construction area. In addition to that, we'll have a second layer of silt sock and silt fence on the southeast side of Austin Avenue, all of which will be regularly inspected and replaced as needed. The construction fence itself will include a dust screen that will enclose the construction area. Trucks that deliver materials to the site will remain covered until they unload at the project site. The work areas will be wetted down and swept as required to control dust. Any stockpiles that are needed on site will be covered at the end of each day, and they will also be surrounded by perimeter erosion controls. Any excess materials will be removed from the project site promptly. And then lastly, stabilization of exposed soils as required will occur if they need to be exposed for any period of time. I'll hand it back to Katie.
Thanks, Katie. The next slide, please. There were a few other materials that we were asked to coordinate since our last hearing. One was to provide a copy of the shadow study that was prepared as part of our draft project impact report filing with the Boston Planning Department. We have expanded that shadow study to include analysis that was conducted by our project wetlands scientist, Rimmer Environmental, and Mary is here with us tonight. The general nature of that analysis included that shadows from this building are limited to a few hours in the late afternoon in spring through fall. They're indirect in their nature as the building is set back from the marsh. And that our study does not incorporate, just for context, the existing vegetation that you can see on the left side of your screen, which is 6 to 8 feet in height, all along the perimeter of the marsh. As when you do a shadow study in Boston, you're not allowed to incorporate existing tree and vegetation shadows. So our study is predominantly only existing building versus proposed buildings in Boston. We're also incorporating the replacement of the existing DCR fence. As noted by the staff, there is an existing fence that is fairly overgrown along the edge of the marsh. We are installing a new fence right up along the Austin Avenue right-of-way, and will include an 8-inch gap from the bottom of the fence to allow for migration of any species or habitat that would traverse this area. And we also have been responding to Boston Water and Sewer comments as they are actively completing their review of the project's stormwater management system at this time. So with that, I will pass it back to the commission. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I have a few questions, and I'll save questions about the roadway and the vegetated strip and stormwater to other commissioners. So Commissioner Herbst and myself were able to go and do a site walk. I guess that was a week or so ago, and a few observations on the site. Maybe my first question would be to Ms. Rimmer regarding her thoughts on the salt marsh in that area proximate to the site. Seems to be degraded, and I'm wondering what her thoughts are on that degradation. I know what my thoughts were, but I'm not a scientist. What I observed was there was a seems like there must have been some sort of demolition and excavation work going on after the big fire in 2019. Then the site was stabilized. So I would assume that there's a lot of construction materials. You've got the dirt road. It doesn't look like it's frequented that much. And so that will come up later in questioning. But it feels like maybe the dust and the soils, excuse me, traveling in the air and settling into the salt marsh area and maybe causing like oxygen deprivation. And again, I don't know that for sure, but that was my theory looking at it. So I'd love to be educated about that part of the marsh there.
Sure.
May I just ask a quick context question before I pass to Mary?
Sure.
I just want to understand the observation of potential dust. Are you referring to within the Austin Avenue corridor itself, or were you observing anything in the laydown area that you were specifically asking about?
No, I was thinking about the site, excuse me. And I was thinking about the site in general and maybe cumulative impacts. And certainly residential will be much less intensive, so that's great. But I'm asking this baseline question just to get an idea, I guess, to create the baseline here. And if there was less intensive use there, would we expect to see a healthier salt marsh in that area?
Great, that's great context. Mary, please.
Sure, thank you. For those who don't know me, I'm Mary Rimmer, Rimmer Environmental Consulting. And yes, I spent some time in that area of the marsh, and it certainly is stressed along the edge, particularly. And part of that is there's unconsolidated, uncontrolled stormwater runoff that generates some sediment and runs off of the road. So anything that can be done to improve the stormwater management on the road, and anything that contributes to the road would be beneficial for the marsh. And then there is a fair amount of debris along the embankment between the road and the marsh edge. And there are a number of invasive species that are typical along the marsh edge. In particular, in this area, there's up to a 30-foot band of Phragmites, which often it occurs in a lot of areas along the edge of the salt marsh, where there's a lot of freshwater input and not enough salt water reaching up into the margins of the marsh there. So it is experiencing stress. It has a hard edge, at the road, obviously, and there is vegetation there that does provide some wildlife habitat. But right along the edge of the marsh, the Phragmites itself has very compromised wildlife habitat. But I would say that managing the stormwater runoff towards that marsh is the primary improvement that you can do without actually getting into the marsh and directly working in that area. And there are restrictions under the regulations on how and when you can do that. So
Great.
happy to go
That's
through
very
if you'd
helpful.
like.
Thank you. Okay. The other thing I observed by being there was I saw a concrete cap that was shattered, and underneath it, and this is over by the fence. So it was shattered, and underneath is a plastic structure. It had a valve on it that I couldn't turn. But it was apparent to me, and maybe looking at the fence itself, that, and again, I'm just supposing that after the fire, there was a lot of activity there and a lot of trucks and a lot of things going on. But it felt to me like, trucks were backing up into that area, maybe hitting the fence, coming way too close to the salt marsh. And so during construction, I think I'd like to see a hard barrier to prevent that sort of incursion. Because I understand it's hard when someone's trying to maneuver a truck in certain areas and they'll back up to the limits to where they can back up. But in this case, that fence is very close to a sensitive area. As far as I had a question about the gravel strip. What's the difference, not the difference, but what's the reasoning for a gravel strip and a vegetated strip as opposed to a purely vegetated strip?
Sure, I'll pass this one to Katie, but I think we do see a benefit of combining the two to get two different types of benefits from it fundamentally.
Right, and I think what the gravel strip does is first, it's kind of a first line of protection to intercept any debris or sediment running off the roadway itself, and having that kind of collect there and then being able to maintain it and clean it out without that getting into the vegetated area. The other thing this stone does is it kind of intercepts that first flush of runoff and slows it down a bit, provides energy dissipation, directs it underground a bit as much as it can, and kind of just slows runoff before it sheet flows over the vegetated area, which just provides greater protection for erosion further downstream.
Okay, that makes sense. So the gravel itself is sort of like pea-sized rock and particulates or whatever, so it's not just dirt.
Yep, and it would be maintained like any other BMP, so it would be inspected quarterly, cleaned as needed, and then the gravel could be replaced as needed as well.
Okay, it seems like, and I think we've done this in other orders of conditions, it seems like quarterly maintenance is great, but after large storms,
That's a great point.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of runoff. Okay, and then I think Commissioner Herbst will talk about the road in depth. The fence itself, I know that it will take coordination to work with DCR to replace that fence. So I guess my question, in the replacement, you're proposing to bring the fence away from the salt marsh, which I think is great. That addresses some of my concerns that I talked about earlier about construction trucks or anything, any sort of vehicular access from getting too close to the salt marsh. And I guess my question is why you have to wait to replace the fence? Couldn't you just put the new fence in now and then at some point DCR will take down their fence, I would imagine, or it's going to fall down. So
Sure,
throwing
so
that
I'd
out
love to take the first part of that, and then Liz, you can talk a little bit about your timing and what might be possible for the ownership group. What we've discussed with DCR is that, as you noted, the existing fence is fairly farther into the reservation. And as you noted, that is not in the best interest of either the marsh or DCR. The intention there was always to limit people's ability to, walk down that steep slope and create erosion, but also to make sure that they had a barrier to stop some of the dumping practices. They agree that putting it in the Austin Avenue corridor is beneficial to all parties, and that as the applicant, we would maintain the new fence. We discussed with them that the most sensitive thing to do for the marsh would be for us to go in and by hand cut the existing fence posts at grade, leaving any foundation that exists for the fence in place currently, and then hand remove panels of the fence unless there's vegetation significantly growing on them, and cut and remove of that for them. So that is our current approach and strategy to the fence removal piece. And I'll let Liz talk a little bit about their timing for when that might be possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Liz Bejo with Redgate. So right now, as you know, we're still in the entitlement phase. And then once we are able to secure final approvals, we would be releasing our design team to go through a design development and construction documentation process that could take easily 8-9 months, plus agreements with the city. We're looking at about a year before we have final construction documentation and we're able to price it out. And be able to have a contractor, bid the work and be able to get our equity and financing in place in order to release the work. We could explore the possibility of parsing off the fence itself. I think the only concern that I would have is I would want to review that with the design team because it would need to be coordinated with the final roadway layout as well. I know it's following kind of the edge of the roadway at this point. And,
Liz, I'm sorry, and maybe I didn't make myself clear. I was talking about maybe when I said now, I didn't mean literally, I'm sorry. I meant when you get everything in order and you're building the project, why not I should have said put in the fence then.
So, absolutely. That I think would be the intent.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
I thought you meant at this point.
No, I'm very inartful. Okay.
But to follow up on that, I think if there were places where temporary fence may be needed out there, I think that's certainly something we could talk about. There does need to be a little flexibility, as Liz noted, with the permanent installation for roadway utilities and other coordination with DCR and MBTA. Okay. I will pass this along for others. Elena, I know that you had a comment here about the timing and future work as it relates to a resiliency measure that's being proposed in the future.
Yes, so we had received an email from the MBTA, which apologies for sending that over to the project team relatively late in the afternoon, but they had just informed us that so this development had agreed to work with the T on a mutually agreeable flood intervention on MBTA property along approximately 200 linear feet of Austin Avenue and the Orient Heights rail yard driveway. So the flood intervention would be anticipated to achieve 17.5 BCB or higher. And we were just, so I guess the main question I had was whether that was in design or what the timeline is looking like for that, because it's sort of a significant enough portion of the work that ideally that would be included in the design plans for this permit.
Sure, and I want to have some clarity on that as well. So at the last hearing, 2 members of MBTA's team were here. Unfortunately, they could not join us tonight, but they have been now for a number of years in the development of a fairly significant resiliency plan for all of their assets and do have a focus on the Orient Heights rail yard as a potential place for resiliency measures. They are not complete with their plan and have not disclosed in any way to us, to the city, or to others what that will ultimately look like. We are committed through our Article 80 board memo to work with them on the intervention that Elena describes. And so, you know, I think our original discussion with Boston Conservation staff back when we were in the Article 80 process, predating the current staff, was that it would probably make more sense to be filed as a separate notice of intent for a couple of reasons. One, that work likely will be on a different timeline than the overall project work. It's work that needs to happen within the active rail yard, not within an easement for Austin Avenue or other areas that are safer contractors in the public. And so we are requesting that that work travel on a separate path and do its own notice of intent when the MBTA is ready to pursue that.
Thank you. Yeah, just noting that. And so I think that I believe they had specified that it would need to happen before this project was issued a certificate of compliance. And so I was just wondering, I guess, how that would work with the timeline.
Absolutely. So unfortunately for us, our certificate of compliance is still a number of years away here. So I think we feel fairly confident that MBTA will have come to a resolution on their desired pathway, and that we will be able to fulfill that obligation under its own notice within the time frame prior to a certificate of compliance. Again, you know, there are considerations for the agency that they would need to further vet independently, and they do understand that anything that they do or we do would be subject to Boston Conservation jurisdiction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Before I go to commissioners, just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email. Excuse me. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, on the Austin Avenue roadway there, is that a roadway, private way open to public travel, you know?
I never seek to be the lawyer on any of these projects, but it is my understanding that the beginning portion of Austin Avenue is a private way open to travel for the property, the project site itself, for the MBTA, and for DCR, that it is not in any way open to public travel. It serves as a maintenance access and a driveway to 1141 Bennington, as well as DCR's interest.
Okay, and so long-term maintenance of that particular pathway lies with all three, or just 1141 or MBTA or who?
Well, I suspect through this process that anything that we do to improve, we will likely enter into an agreement with DCR and MBTA that it would be the long-term responsibility of the applicant. And so when we propose paving, natural stormwater treatment, underground stormwater treatment, we are expecting that the applicant will maintain all of those things in perpetuity.
Right, so that is on property owned by 1141, or is it property shared by DCR, being the abutter on one side and 1141 on the other side?
Could I ask the staff to go back to a site plan just so I can narrate the ownership? It is a little complicated in this space. Perhaps if you could take us back to the waterfront area plan, might be easier to see in color. Thank you so much. Okay, so as you can see here, and it doesn't show all the way up to Bennington Street, but the portion of Austin Avenue that comes from Bennington Street that goes to the hexagon that you can see on this plan is approximately the limit of the private way of Austin Avenue. Again, half of which is underlined by land owned by 1141 Bennington and half underlined by DCR. It has, again, an easement that allows both parties as well as MBTA fundamentally to have access. As we come further down here into the area where we're showing the driveway to MBTA, the majority of that property of Austin Avenue is purely MBTA's property.
Yes, so my concern is I understand all that. And then we have this gravel filter strip, which will take the first flush. It may require, as you mentioned, you know, quarterly review. Is that filter strip on the inside of where this proposed fence is going?
Yes, it is on it would be on the inside of where the proposed fence would go. It's, as you look at sort of the S-curve shape we have here, it is a band that is linear and following along the edge of the roadway.
Okay, and then I guess my question is, so the part that's owned by the MBTA, or it's the MBTA's driveway, or whatever we want to call it, will they make the commitment to keep this gravel filter strip clean, excavating it and cleaning it out if they need to biannually or whenever they need to do it? Or is that going to be undertaken by the applicant at 1141?
We anticipate it will also be undertaken by the applicant at 1141 Bennington. We understand that our introduction of new features into the space would be the responsibility of Redgate and not of the MBTA or DCR where applicable.
Right. And the answers given to the water and sewer, there were several on rainfall. So this roadway will have an initial capture inside the gravel filter strip and then sheet flow into Belle Isle Marsh. Is that correct?
Correct, which is what the compacted gravel does here today. There's no capture. All of this area sheet flows into, some of it actually the grade comes down, it comes into the rail yard, but does spill over to the Belle Isle Marsh in this location.
Right. And the other answer that the commission received was that the stormwater retention system is designed to take the 100-year storm. And it was at 7.68 inches of rainfall without overflow. That is correct?
That is correct.
Yes. All right, well, those are the questions we had. The gravel filter strip and the roadway ownership was a challenge. Don't mind my dog's eating the mailman. It was a challenge to try to figure out who was in charge of it. So I would just make sure staff, whatever we do in the order of conditions, we figure out what agreements will be made for long-term and keep those, a requirement that whatever the agreement is between the T, DCR and the applicant be given to us before we give a final on the order of conditions.
Great. Okay, thank you. Thanks for raising the question on the ownership. So Katie, just so I understand this, from the Bennington Street entrance down to the southern portion of that road, before you enter the T's rail yard, is a private way. And then the remainder of that road is owned by the MassDOT or the T?
It's owned by the T, by MBTA.
And so they must have rights in the private way, but you don't necessarily have rights on their property because it's not classified as a private way?
As always, your legal analysis is better than mine. And yes, I believe that is the case. And the understanding here is that the work and the improvements here would be subject to review and a license through the MBTA for this.
Okay, thank you. That certainly makes it challenging. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Linay?
Yeah, I have a question somewhat related to Commissioner Sullivan's, and that's, will there be an agreement in place then around who deals with snow removal or ice melt products on this Austin Ave, and obviously only using, products that are appropriate for a sensitive area like this?
Yes, we anticipate that through DCR's review and issuance of a construction site access permit, as well as licensing through MBTA, that'll be codified. Currently, MBTA is the entity that does the snow plowing in this location to get to their gate because they are the only and primary user at this portion of time. As the applicant and as someone who will be picking up significant responsibilities in the quarter, we are happy to agree to the standard conditions that Boston issues, which limit in snow removal and de-icing.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. You know what would make this much simpler is if the MBTA would sell you that piece of property for $1, because the day that Commissioner Herbst and I were there, two employees went in and one came out at that gate, and we were probably there like 45 minutes. And we did take the opportunity to interview one of the employees, and he was very forthcoming and said, we asked him if it was necessary for him to use that entrance and exit. And he said, not really. I just happen to be over this way. It's a little easier. I could use the Bennington Street entrance as well. But my suspicion is that the T is not going to be interested in selling that property to you, but that would certainly be helpful here. And it raises the question that I'm sure Commissioner Herbst is going to bring up is to how, because it's so infrequently traveled, how important it is to the T in regards to either using it or not using it, and the width of the road there. So anyway, I'll go to Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, that was good teeing it up, Chair Parker. I was kind of wondering about the frequency of travel along there. Especially, we haven't seen that many filter strips as a BMP. I was trying to look through the files quickly. And there's like less than a handful, and most of them are in some sort of like fairly limited paved access, utility-ish area, but typically there is then also a secondary means of stormwater drainage as opposed to sheet flow. So I was just kind of wondering, A, the level of travel, B, the sort of, you know, what you would be anticipating would be perhaps flowing into or overflowing that BMP.
Sure. So I'm happy to take the MBTA question, and Katie, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the BMP. As Chair Parker noted, life would be much simpler in the Austin Avenue corridor if the applicant had ownership of these spaces. They are shared spaces between agencies and the applicant. In this particular location, the property is MBTA's. And so, you know, we have no ability to tell them what they can and cannot do at their gate, but we have been dialoguing with them for the better part of 3 years in this process. And, you know, some of the things, not to speak for them, but I have heard is they would agree that the use here is somewhat infrequent, but they would also say that the reason this gate is very important to them is that they do move large cargo into the rail yard using this access point and not the Bennington Street access points. And in particular, as we were designing the roadway here and thinking about this space, they were really concerned about turning motions into their yard and how they access from that fixed gate point. The location of the gate was incredibly important to them. The width of the roadway, which is, Katie's going to correct me, but I believe it's 22 feet, which was their bare minimum. Thank you. It is dictated by MBTA and the practices that they believe that they need here for the offload of large cargo, in some cases, very large pieces of equipment or rail cars into the back of the Orient Height rail yard. And then I'll pass to Katie to talk BMP a little.
Sure. And I guess you mentioned water that would flow to the gravel filter strip. And it's really just the driveway itself. There's not a large uphill watershed. You know, you can see that there's some landscaped areas between the driveway and the building, but there isn't really a large contributing area or large amounts of stormwater volume. The upper portion of this driveway actually has a set of catch basins kind of around the second tree heading downhill from the hexagon area. So not all of this driveway would actually drain overland. Some of it is actually picked up and conveyed into the infiltration system. And I would also say that the gravel filter strip works in conjunction with the landscaped area adjacent to it. And one thing that we were able to achieve by moving the driveway further out of the waterfront area was it allowed us to flatten the slopes between the southeastern edge of the property and the driveway itself. So the landscape area promotes infiltration, it provides water quality treatment, and it also serves as roughness to slow stormwater, and the flatter slopes help that as well.
Okay, yeah, no, that's helpful because I was noticing sort of the gentle curves there, and was wondering how large the trucks and the CAD auto turn sort of software were going through there. I guess just in terms of like alternative BMPs, did you guys consider like having, you know, sort of a collection system that would deliver it to, say, a dry well or something like that, that would, you know, maybe then have the ability to have some sort of filtration or, you know, overflow system or something like that? Or is the site constrained in some way that the filter strip made more sense?
It does, and one thing we're trying really hard to do is to avoid having any kind of piped outfall to the marsh, to protect from erosion and concentrated stormwater overflows. And what this does, it allows stormwater to flow really evenly over a wide surface, instead of being all collected in one point. We also just don't have a lot of flexibility. We need to meet existing topography at the MBTA gate and the MBTA property. So that puts us down at lower elevations here than the rest of Boston Avenue, and just needing to respect that. It doesn't give us a lot of vertical depth to play with for water quality treatment.
And then just last question, in terms of like, given that we haven't seen many of these, is there some sort of way that we could sort of follow up on the success or some sort of metrics that, you know, this is perking the way we thought it would? The seed mix that you've spec'd is performing well in this type of environment, and just in terms of like playing it forward for other applicants into the future?
I think that's a great idea, and I think certainly we could incorporate it into the longer term monitoring for the plantings and other pieces, and we could wrap it very neatly into that. And we agree, we want it to be deeply successful. If it's not, we want to adjust accordingly.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you guys considering it. I'm sorry I missed the original hearing for this, so playing a little catch up, but that's all the questions I had.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson, and thank you for the question regarding what goes in that entrance. And I think I found the culprit to the crushed concrete cap that I saw on site. It looks like that would be proximate to the key card entrance there. And I could imagine a large, I don't know, flatbed or whatever, however you would transport something that large, driving over that. It feels like that's about the only thing that could have done that. And Commissioner Sullivan, I was going to ask you, no, I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilson, it sounds like you're okay with the seed mix, but you'd like some monitoring on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't read through it entirely. It seemed most of these seem reasonable. I think monitoring would be good just to see like whether it shifts towards a monoculture, whether it's actually performing or it's just a gravel strip, that sort of thing.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Yeah, could we go for a second back to the revisions to the proposed work in the waterfront area? I have a question, and maybe this question has been answered, but how high is it from the Belle Isle Marsh to the what appears to be the top of this sort of cliff in that picture?
I want to make sure I understand the question. So is the ask the grade of the driveway to MBTA versus the elevation at the salt marsh?
No, this isn't the picture that I'm looking at. I'm looking at the revisions to proposed work in the waterfront area. I think it's slide number 3. So this is slide number 2 that you've got up there now. Yeah, that one. Okay, and so I'm just trying to understand from the point where it shows the Belle Isle Marsh, and then there's that sort of hatch thing. How high is it up to that next point? That flat, relative, what appears to be relatively flat surface.
Sure, Katie, and I think this is a question to the grading plan. If I understand the question correctly, it's about sort of what the embankment is like in that stretch adjacent to it, or what the proposed grading looks like.
And I guess the answer would be is that the slope varies a bit, the steepness of it, and the length. That kind of hexagonal turnaround area is set a bit higher, and then we slope down to the existing grade at the MBTA gate. The slope adjacent to the driveway itself, I believe at its steepest is about 4:1, which is fairly flat. And then it gets flatter from there as we get further down the hill.
And I appreciate that answer, but how many feet is that from the line that appears on this drawing that says Belle Isle Marsh to whatever the next level is up?
So just looking at a plan here, I would say it's on average between 3 and 4 feet, depending on where you are. And Katie's note is that, again, it's a fairly wide band of vegetation there. So the overall experience slope is approximately 4:1.
And so are you expecting storm water to come up that embankment?
Oh, no, for context, I think you're asking, how does water get into the gravel filter strip?
Well, I mean, I suppose I could certainly ask that question, which is probably a lot smarter than the one I asked, but are you expecting water from the marsh in a stormwater situation to come up over that hatched area?
No, we are not expecting regularly that area would be inundated. That elevation is higher, or it's higher in almost all locations than the existing floodplain in that stretch near the gravel trench.
Okay, so does that also mean that you are not expecting water infiltration at the bottom levels of your structure?
You mean, is there a distance between the bottom and standing groundwater fundamentally? Like, is there enough space for it to infiltrate? I would defer to Katie, but what I would say is for the vast majority of it, there's going to be a fair distance there because of elevation. And as you get closer to the MBTA gate, that is really the lowest point in this area.
But what is the bottom of this structure have? Is that where you're going to have heating? And I mean, I'm trying to understand that.
The building itself.
Oh, in the building. Okay. Sorry, I apologize. I think I was answering your question related to the gravel trench, and perhaps the question is related to the structure, to the building?
Yes, it was related to the building. What's at the bottom of the building?
Oh, sure. I apologize. I don't know that we have a slide that shows the building in context today. It was in our last slideshow. But Katie, maybe you can just talk a little bit about the elevations of the building.
Right. So I guess the use of the lowest level of the building is really limited to parking areas under the building, and then pedestrian access from that level up to the next level, which would be the occupied portions of the building. That parking level is set to provide excuse me, the required freeboard between the 2070 flood elevation and the lowest level of the building. So it's set to accommodate that. So we do not expect water to reach that level.
And where are the utilities for this building located?
Sure. Perhaps the staff could go back. Maybe one slide would help here to see if we can see the space between the two buildings. Even one more, if you wouldn't mind. So you can see here, the hexagon is the driveway into the project site. It is basically the space between the two wings of this building. And just off the page, unfortunately, is the location of the transformers, which are also elevated per the city's policy for climate resiliency.
And how high are they elevated?
So the flood elevation here is at most 12. The elevation of the transformers and the lowest level of the building would be at 16. So 4 feet above that.
And in thinking about the future, is there any chart or expectation that you've seen that's going to suggest that the 16 is not going to be above water?
I'll take that as sort of a broader policy question. I think we felt like we worked well with the city staff here. Again, the projections that they are using are 2071% projections. So we are, I think, comfortable that provides the level of assurance that will make this as resilient or more resilient than Boston's upcoming development and current development today. I think the other really important thing to note here is not only is the parking elevated above that sea level rise elevation, but the occupiable space, the first residential units, they are up another 12 plus feet, Katie, from that elevation, and are in the elevation 30s and higher.
And so just so I'm sure I understand, that there is nothing except parking below the elevation where the transformers are.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Sorry, I'm here. Thank you. In terms of the movement of the road, that I think that is an improvement. I was looking for more improvement. Some of our discussion may suggest that is going to be hard to achieve. What is the width of the road now on the MBT that you're proposing on the MBTA portion?
So to answer sort of both parts of that question, as you probably noted in the site walk, right now the entire width of the property is effectively a driveway today, and we are looking to formalize 22 feet in the new space and then vegetate the remainder.
Okay, so I of course was hoping that you could move it a bit more. It was our observation that it's used for people with regular cars. I hear that it is sometimes used for equipment. There is another entrance on the other side with the same kind of gate. I guess that's.
I will note that there was a very helpful person in the chat who seemed to have a good history and context about this, and did note that they use this for rolling stock supplies, specialized equipment, to get onto the tracks to do heavy maintenance and for responding to emergencies. So that was context that I didn't have in full, and I would thank the individual who added that to the chat.
Okay. So other questions. I believe the area that you're now proposing the gravel strip treatment is an area that you were not proposing stormwater treatment previously. Is that right?
Correct. Previously, we were proposing to vegetate it, but not to formally intercept it.
So, and this might also be a question for Commissioner Sullivan, but now are you meeting the state stormwater requirements for the treatment you're providing for that area?
What I would say is we are a redevelopment project fundamentally, and in aggregate, as Commissioner Sullivan noted, we are doing a very significant amount of, honestly, probably more than is required, storing and infiltrating for the entire project as an aggregate, which includes the underground stormwater management system located underneath the hexagon and on the project site.
Yeah, of course, we have or at least I have a particular concern about what happens along the right at the edge of the salt marsh.
Yes.
Is everything you mentioned? There are storm drains. Is everything treated either now through the gravel strip or a storm drain along that the salt marsh southern edge of the property?
I would say all of the vehicular impervious area, yes.
And probably worth noting that you can see an area there that is actually beyond the gate, which is MBTA's, and we are proposing no work beyond the gate. So you'll notice in all the plans, it's the same little sort of footprint just beyond the gate there. That paved area is functionally inside the yard. And so we probably could not comment on their work in that space.
Okay, the other question I had is now where you're proposing the fence, will there be property that is your property on the salt marsh side of the fence?
There will be property that is MBTA's and DCR's within the Austin Street right of way that will be on the other side of the fence. But for the property owner, the land that is in the private way that goes along with their site is only on the northwestern edge. So no, it would not.
I just wanted to make sure that you're not fencing off areas that you have where you're responsible for maintaining the vegetation. Is that fair to say? Or
correct. So we are moving the fence to the edge of the existing corridor today. And we are not seeking to fence off areas that we have responsibility for. Now, we do have to continue dialoguing with DCR here ultimately as part of the site access plan here. And, I think one of the things they had discussed is having a man gate in particular here, the ability for a person to open the gate, get to the other side for their property, for any area of the right of way that might find itself tucked in there is important. And I think, Katie, we have agreed that near the hexagon might make some sense for the location for that gate.
Okay. And just a question for Commissioner Sullivan. I presume he's satisfied with the treatment provided for this area, but I just wanted to hear from him on that.
Yeah, as long as we maintain this gravel filter strip, that will work fine. That's why I want to see what this agreement says and who's responsible, how often we're going to look at it, and they got to report to the Concom that what they find, how often they need to fix it, and so we can monitor it. It's BMPs like this are labor intensive. If there's a lot of activity, if the road sits there and nothing goes on, a little bit of water, a lot of silt won't fill that thing up. That's only 3/4 inch cracked stone. It's 1.5 feet deep, 1 foot wide, so it's 1.5 cubic feet, and only 30% of that is voids that get filled up with stone. So it's gonna take some work cleaning that thing out. That's why I wanted that agreement put as part of the order of conditions as soon as we get to see it. So we realize that whoever has that burden, which is now I hear the proponent, that they're held to that standard of keeping that thing clean.
Okay, and I guess I'd like to suggest, however we work that out, that that Commissioner Sullivan has an opportunity to review exactly what the requirement is, so that we know it. We have some reason to believe it, that what they're being asked to do is appropriate, and that the timing and so forth is appropriate.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Herbst. That was going to be my question. So the what you're saying is the condition regarding the maintenance agreement needs to be reviewed and to the satisfaction of staff and probably at least one commissioner.
At least one.
Okay.
Yeah. One who might know something. Okay, I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I think we can open it up for public comment. Elena, who's up first? I know we have several raised hands.
Yes, so I see Cindy Baxter.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you to the commission. And I'd like to highlight, as you all know, that we did submit written testimony. So we, again, appreciate the opportunity to do that. We'd like to point out the obvious. This is an environmentally risky spot. It just has a number of items, and it seems like trying to fit an awful lot into a very sensitive area. Not only that, it's a long-term issue in terms of everything going on near this property. It's not just an area of environmental concern, but we've got the city of Boston trying to manage sustainability because Bennington Street is an evacuation route. We've got the MBTA dealing with expansion plans, not just and sustainability plans, not just because of sustainability alone, but because of the commitment they've made to the red blue line extension. And there's, at least in their current design plans, no accommodation at the other end of the blue line. The Orient Heights Rail Yard is basically it. And we've got the DCR, who is actively working on doing marsh restoration within the guidelines and regulations for the Commonwealth. All of this is going on with a number of players who are not present at this hearing today, and that concerns us. We're also concerned that Redgate, from our understanding, is an investment company. All of the things that I've mentioned so far are really long-term. Redgate is not long-term. They're 5 to 7 years after they've completed the property, and then it's turned over to another owner. It has to return shareholder value. That makes sense from a corporate perspective. But this is a commission that is hopefully going to protect the marsh and the people who are going to potentially live there, as well as current residents, from what is obviously a very sensitive area and a high-risk flood area. Finally, there are too many unknowns. First of all, our understanding after talking to the DCR, after talking to others in the area, are that the property lines aren't clear. Some of the conversation that I've heard tonight lends credence to that. We also know, and Katie Moniz has mentioned that as well, that the expansion needs are still undefined for the MBTA. It makes sense. They've got a lot of stuff going on, but this is not the right time for us to be putting in a very dense building in a very sensitive area with undefined requirements that the MBTA has to do on behalf of the Commonwealth for transportation needs. As I've already mentioned, we have a lot of unknowns about the major flood evacuation plans as well. The city of Boston, as well as other cities in the area, are working diligently to make sure that those evacuation plans are being completed and formulated. All of that's still in progress. It's still an unknown. And we've talked a lot about shared access tonight, and that's a major concern for us. Shared access, again, I know I'm repeating myself, with parties who are not here to share their views directly. That's concerning. And then finally, there's water everywhere. Is the civil engineering plan that Katie Cruz has been kind enough to share with us really sufficient? Do we need another independent look at a very complicated plan for a very dense set of buildings? We know that as the public, we don't have all of the expertise on that. And for that reason, we're looking for some of that to be defined. And then as a final comment, I just want to mention that we are not alone. As per the testimony that we submitted today, there are several other organizations that we've been talking with who agree with our concerns. It's just not little grassroots Friends of Belle Isle Marsh. It does include Green Roots. It does include Neighborhood Office of Affordable Housing, who builds for residents. It includes Mothers Out Front. It includes Tree Eastie and others. So I'd like to thank everybody again for the opportunity to speak and mention our concerns. And again, we appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Baxter. Brought up a question that I did not ask of the proponent. Are the residences going to be condominiums or rentals?
The residences are going to be rental, and they meet the city's inclusionary development policy.
Okay. Okay. And the order of conditions obviously will be in the chain of title and recorded for everyone to see. Okay. Ms. Fitzsimmons?
Hi, thank you for calling on me. My name is Emily Fitzsimmons. I am on staff, part-time staff with Friends of Belle Isle Marsh only in the last year. I met some of you from Redgate when you presented to our board meeting last January. So it's nice to see you all. I'm an East Boston resident for almost 20 years and got to know the marsh, luckily, very soon after moving here, and find it very helpful as a natural respite, as a place to bring family and friends when they come to Boston. And I'll say you don't have to go very far in Googling salt marsh protection, hazards to salt marshes, to find a lot of information out there from very reputable sources like the science section of the New York Times on salt marsh sparrows, which are endangered. A big feature article just in the last month in the Times on an area in a marsh in England, which was a 10-year project to have farmers move and to have the marsh come back, to reclaim the land as marsh, and how important that is primarily for issues of flooding, but also carbon capture. The marsh is a living organism, and I am not an expert. I am speaking as a layperson, but as a living organism, it needs to not be confined. It needs to be protected. We need to be thinking about the future, because marshes all along the US East Coast, and when I speak for marshes, I'm speaking for marshes in the world. A lot of the reading I've done talks about, India, Gulf Coast, etc. But as Connor Olfson presented to us at our board meeting in the past year, a great presentation, he's with the Woods Hole Group. Some of the dangers to marshes have to do not only with sea level rise, but confinement, that squeeze effect. And so that's why I'm speaking against the 220 unit apartment complex right on the periphery, because we're staring down at the future right now. We have stories. It's a little distressing to read about the flooding in Valencia. And they diverted a river many, many decades ago from coming through the city, but still there are 200 deaths from massive amounts of flooding due to these climate-induced huge storms. So from my point of view, as an East Boston resident, as somebody who goes to the marsh frequently and somebody who's on staff with Belle Isle Marsh, I just think it's unreasonable to build on the immediate periphery of the marsh. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tringali?
Yes, thank you. I am definitely a layperson and do not have a lot of knowledge regarding the wetlands and how they are affected by different things, but I am a resident of Barnes Ave, and I know that there is a low-income housing project planned for the end of Barnes Ave with 57 units that will also border on and actually be built on part of the wetlands. And it concerns me that we're continuing to build up to and onto the wetlands. And has the project at the end of Barnes Ave been taking into consideration and the effect that that will have when looking at this project for Bennington Street, where you're doing more building up to and onto the wetlands? And what will the effect of the Bennington Street one have on the Barnes Ave one? And will they both affect water tables and flooding and the wetlands themselves? I mean, the wetlands are beneficial for people, fish, wildlife. They protect and improve the water quality. They provide a home for fish and wildlife and store floodwaters, which prevents flooding in the adjacent area. Will this area now become flooded because of all this development in the wetlands? It's something to be concerned about and to look forward to, as both Ms. Fitzsimmons and Ms. Baxter said, all this development that's going on in that area, the expansion of the Blue Line. I think we're looking very short-sightedly at how this is being done, rather than looking at projects that are going to be done in the future and that will be impacted by what's happening to the wetlands at 1141 Bennington Street and at the end of Barnes Ave. And we should take those into consideration and plan long range and not just short range, and put buildings that just barely fit, and take those things into consideration. And I respect all your expertise, because it's a lot more than I have, and the time and effort you put into this. But I would like to see some thought to other projects that are planned for the wetlands, such as the one at the end of Barnes Ave, and future projects with the taken into consideration when looking at approving this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I would throw that compliment right back to all the advocates, friends of the Belle Isle Marsh. I know that you spend countless hours overseeing, protecting, and being stewards of a valuable resource area. I can assure you that when we get projects such as this in sensitive areas such as this is why we have multiple hearings, and we're asking all these questions. And at the end of the day, if this project is permitted, there will be a order of conditions and special conditions that might be over 100, probably over 100 in this case. So we're cognizant of the area and are relying on a lot of expertise here to ensure that the project, both during construction and after construction, does not have any adverse impacts on the salt marsh. Anybody else from the public? I don't see any other hands. Okay. Anything else from anybody in the commission?
Yeah.
Chair Parker.
Chair
Oh.
Parker,
Yes.
yeah, one of the speakers mentioned that the property lines, there's some, I don't know if the word was confusion or what it was. Is it clear what the property lines are?
I thought I was clear on the property lines, but Katie, did you want to address that? Katie Moniz.
Yes, thank you, Chair Parker. Yes, a title survey of the property boundaries for this site and the adjacent sites within Austin Avenue has been conducted. We submitted copies of our draft application of the notice of intent to both MBTA and DCR, the parties who were obviously interested in the corridor. It included a copy of that survey plan and those property lines, and we are not aware of any consideration from either agency that there's any confusion.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so
Chair Parker, if I could just
Yes.
add, the Boston Water Sewer runs a 12-inch water line down that Austin Avenue area through easements and the MBTA, et cetera, and also runs a 30-inch interceptor, sewer interceptor, runs down that whole area. All of that will be taken up during the review of the project with the commission, but I'm just letting you know there's some utilities down to that whole area also.
great, I appreciate that. Thank you. So let me take the time to go over what I think I heard as far as special conditions for this project. One would be construction fence to be replaced by a permanent fence. And we'd like to see that on the site plans, obviously. Maintenance of the gravel strip, and I apologize for my confusion on that. I understand completely what that is now. And the maintenance plan would say something like maintenance at least quarterly and after major storm events. I have Commissioner Linay, you were concerned about a snow management plan or snow removal plan. Elena, is that a standard condition in our order of conditions?
The snow management plan tends to be a standard condition.
Okay.
But yeah, so what we can do is just make sure that we're then reviewing that appropriately, just given the proximity to the marsh.
Yeah, okay, so we'll make sure we have that in there. As far as monitoring during construction, Ellen, I think it was your idea regarding an environmental monitor. Do you care to elaborate on that? What are you thinking?
Absolutely. So the commission included similar conditions in the 90 Allendale Order of Conditions, and this would basically be similar language to what the state uses in their superseding orders of conditions as well, but it would require an environmental monitor, and the commission could determine whether they would want the environmental monitor to share reports, on a weekly basis, every few weeks, monthly, whatever seems appropriate here. And it would be up to commission staff to just ensure that the qualifications of whoever is chosen as the environmental monitor seem appropriate. And I would recommend specifically looking for erosion controls, making sure that any disturbances to the resource areas are appropriately noted in those reports, that we get photos from sort of predetermined locations so that we can, just make sure that as construction is moving forward, if, anything seems out of place, that those are flagged for us. And it would just generally, I think, provide, a more consistent line of communication between commission staff and the project team throughout the project span. And it would also be an option, I believe, for the environmental monitor to then just keep track of plantings, maybe do like an annual check on the plantings once the project is completed, just to make sure that all of the plantings are taking and that, the work that's been done there is holding up the way that it was intended to. So that could be, we could continue getting those reports for a few years, either before a COC is issued or perhaps even after COC is issued, if it's included as a sort of perpetual maintenance condition for a specific number of years.
Okay. Okay, Katie or the owner's rep, Liz, I believe, reaction to the environmental monitor. I assume that's okay.
Yes,
Awesome.
that would be fine.
Okay, good, thank you. And Commissioner Wilson, as far as the ongoing reports on the vegetation to see how it takes, what are you thinking as far as duration for reports?
I think I don't know, I'm trying to remember what we did along like the Charles River Esplanade, but like if you guys are collecting the data sort of annually or some sort of that type of thing, then just reporting back at the end of year 3 when you come back for your certificate of compliance. I think that makes sense, and that basically you're not going to want to have years 1 and 2 look terrible if you're going to come back in year 3. So you'd expect some sort of a shift in course or something like that if the things aren't working. Yeah.
Chair Parker, I had a question
Yes.
on your snow maintenance plan. So that's
Yep.
suggesting that 1141 is going to be plowing the street, and therefore they'll have a snow maintenance.
That was my understanding. Maybe I was incorrect on that.
Yeah, because if it's the MBTA that's going to do it, because I don't know why 1141 cares about if the MBTA can get in their yard. If the MBTA is plowing it, how do we enforce, or how does anybody enforce what they may do according to an agreement 1141 has? I just.
Yeah, interesting. So, Katie or Liz, what's the situation? Who is maintaining the road?
Sure. So again, we will have sort of final negotiations, final discussions on that as part of overall licensing review, which again, we will pass back to the commission. But we are anticipating that it is likely that the applicant will have that responsibility.
Okay. Okay, so Commissioner Sullivan, that's a good segue into the agreement with the T to maintain the gravel strip. How are we approaching that? That's something we want to see before COC or at time of COC or prior?
Well, much prior, I would think, because it depends how we're going to build it. I mean, if right now there'll be a design build. For some reason, the MBTA is in charge of doing it. They want it further away from the fence, or the fence further away, so you can get a backhoe in there, because you're not going to do that by hand. That's what confuses me. There's so many parties involved, and we don't have the T here saying, "Yep, I'm all for it. Let me get down and get an agreement." So that everybody will build everything, and then we'll be at the old for the COC. Hey, what do you want us to do? You approve the plans. And that's what makes me nervous, especially when you're dealing with the state agency who runs out of funds all the time.
So I couldn't agree more, because I am often there when we're coming to ask for the COC. I think we can commit here that we will be able to document for the commission the maintenance obligations of all parties prior to the construction or any construction of 1141 Bennington.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was going to just suggest. Commissioner Sullivan?
Well, I would just say I wouldn't have any problem with that. And then if they can't come to an agreement, that the obligation falls upon 1141.
Sure.
That's all. And they get a license from the T to do all these obligations. Because the T loves giving other people work. That's good. So as long as we have a fall point at some point that somebody has to pick up the burden. And I think the applicant would be willing to do it now. And it isn't that expensive, but it's just something that has to be perpetual. So we take care of it.
Okay. So the agreement before is satisfactory to commission before construction. Was there something else that we wanted approval from at least one commissioner? Or was that agreement, was that it?
It was around what's in the actual maintenance plan, I think.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. That's what I thought, but thank you. Okay, so with that, I would, looks like we have a late hand there. Ms. Miller, did you want to say something? Ms. Miller, you can unmute yourself. Yeah, you're not unmuted.
All right, I think I'm there.
You're here. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Parker, a procedural kind of question. Do you often, or maybe not often, but do you offer to the public a draft order of conditions that the public may review, in particular Friends of Belle Isle, before you issue it by any chance?
Yeah, the draft order of conditions is in the on the website in the and Elena helped me. It's available for public inspection. And what we're doing tonight is we're adding on to that order of conditions.
So do you actually accept revisions? Should they be, or additions or anything like that from the public, or no?
I think that what we accept is we take into consideration public comments, commissioners' comments to fashion the orders of conditions. So some of the comments in your letters, comments that were made verbally this evening go into the consideration for how we're going to condition the work as appropriate.
Okay, so, all right, well, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'd entertain a motion
Chair
to,
Parker,
yes.
apologies. We also had the comments from CZM, and one thing that we were still waiting on that I neglected to mention earlier is that DEP has not provided technical comments on the project, which they were meant to before tonight's hearing, but have not gotten back to us.
Okay, okay. We generally wait for those, don't we, Commissioner Herbst? You're nodding. Okay. Okay, I'll have to save my notes.
All right, would you like a motion to continue the hearing, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries 6-0. Okay. Thank you very much. I think we got a lot accomplished this evening, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
I agree. Thank you to the commission.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is notice of intent for DEP file number 006-2009 and Boston file number 2024-031 from AECom on behalf of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation for the proposed replacement of existing sidewalk, addition of seasonal water line, replacement of an existing water fountain, replacement of deteriorated guardrail, expanding the grass median and reconfiguring several crosswalks to ensure ADA compliance at William J. Day Boulevard and Preble Circle in Dorchester and South Boston. The resource areas are land subject to coastal storm flowage, 25-foot waterfront area, and 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening, Chair Parker. This is Tom Keogh from AECom, and I'm joined this evening by Tom Vaulton of DCR.
Floor is all yours.
Thank you. So if we could go to the first slide, please. Here we are. So this is the approximate length of the sidewalk area here. It was a little tough to fit into just one photo to get it on here, but it's the replacement of the sidewalk on the beach side of William J. Day Boulevard. Going to start at approximately the police barracks and then move in this northerly direction until Dorchester Ave meets William J. Day Boulevard up in the upper right-hand corner here.
Tom, let me just interrupt for a second. We're not starting at the police barracks. We're actually starting at the bathhouse.
The sidewalk, Tom.
The sidewalk is going to be started at the bathhouse.
Okay, look.
Right there at the bottom of the picture. That's the bathhouse. Nope, the middle of the picture. Sorry.
Yeah.
It would be. We're just not going that far. I just want to make it clear that we're not going all the way up to this to the state police barracks, Tom. That's all.
All right, so it will start there. It's the beach side sidewalk that runs up, not the side closest to the ball fields. And as you can see in the upper left-hand corner of the photo, there is Preble Circle there. If we could go to the next slide, please. So portions of the project are located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, and or within the buffer zone to coastal beach and the waterfront area. That is for the sidewalk portion of it. Next slide, please. So the next slide is basically just an aerial photo of the Preble Circle area, a little closer up so you can get an idea of what it looks like. And Preble Circle is in the outer extents of land subject to coastal storm flowage. The floodplain elevation is 10 at that point, and the elevation of Preble Circle varies in between 10 and 11. I'll just wait for the next slide to pop up to give you an idea. All right, so there we are. And if we could just go to the next one, and actually, you can see Preble Circle is about 1,400 feet from the edge of the beach. Here's the floodplain with the VE zone. None of the work is occurring within the VE zone. That portion of the sidewalk work that's occurring within the AE zone, that will be occurring within floodplain elevation 11. We're not proposing any changes to the elevations there. And as I said earlier, Preble Circle, the floodplain changes to elevation 10, which is right about the elevation of Preble Circle itself. So even in the 100-year flood condition, the water would be inches deep in Preble Circle. Next slide, please. And here we are, and you can see the elevation changes for Preble Circle. It changes real quick from the 100-year floodplain to the 500-year floodplain, which is the orange coloring here. The red line indicates the majority of the work that will be occurring at Preble Circle, and that is now a striped pavement area that will be removed and will be an expansion of the grassy median. So we're going to reduce impervious surfaces within the project area by about 9,400 square feet. Next slide, please. And just to give you an idea of the condition of the sidewalk, I think this one tells quite the story for a majority of what we see going on. There's cracks, little sinkholes. Here we are at a crosswalk. We do not have appropriate side slopes here for the for the handicap ramp. That will need to be reconstructed. The ramp coming from the main part of the sidewalk doesn't meet ADA compliance. And we do not have the tactile warning system here, that yellow bumpy pad at the end of it. So all crosswalks within the sidewalk in the project area will have all the crosswalks be ADA compliant at that point. No changes in elevation. The temporary water line, or the seasonal water line rather, that will be installed to service the water fountains will come out of the McCormick bathhouse area there. So we're not going to have to tie into anything in the street. It will just come out of the bathhouse and run under the sidewalk. So we're not going to be in the grass, upsetting root systems or anything like that as we put that in. Next slide, please. Just a couple more pictures here of the sidewalk. We did limit, for your sake, I limited the amount of pictures that were showing of the dilapidated sidewalk. You've seen one sidewalk crack, you've seen them all. So just a couple here to give you an idea. Next slide, please. Here is the guardrail, just an example of one area of the guardrail that needs to be replaced. A couple of the posts are missing, the guardrail is collapsed, and there's missing sections throughout. So that would be replaced there in kind in the exact same location. Next slide, please. And so here is Preble Circle. As you can see to the, what it is the south of Preble Circle, adjacent to the median is a striped area that's supposed to prohibit vehicle access. As you can see, cars still use it. Just a great aerial photo. I don't know what that guy's doing driving in there, but he shouldn't be. So that will be an area that for the area that is striped, the asphalt will be removed and that will be converted to a grass median in that area. And it will wrap up around the sidewalk a little bit there too. So it's a little more than just that striped area, but that is the major work that's occurring at Preble Circle. And here is just the street view of it, so you can get an idea that the work will be occurring to the left of the striped area. Vehicles will be able to pass, and that will minimize any traffic disruption during construction. You'll still have 2 lanes that are able to go by, and it won't disrupt anything on the rotary itself. As you can see, the construction areas for all of them, the sidewalk and the Preble Circle area, are relatively small. There's not a lot of room for storage. So they do anticipate, when they remove the sidewalk and they remove the asphalt, just live loading the material and trucking it off site. And so that is it. In summary, it's a maintenance project. Everything will be put back in the same location that it currently is today. The sidewalk will not expand in width or height, so there'll be no permanent impacts to the land subject to coastal storm flowage. And within Preble Circle, the permanent impacts to land subject to coastal storm flowage is the conversion of approximately 9,400 square feet of asphalt to a vegetated surface. That would be it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can always tell someone who doesn't live in the city asking a question why that car is in an unauthorized area, driving in an unauthorized area.
Well, I'm from Charlestown. I know exactly why he's there.
Oh, you're one of my neighbors. Okay, because it's there. That's why. Okay.
Exactly. If there was more traffic, I might have been in there the time I've driven through just to get around it, but.
Right. Just before we get into commissioners' comments here, I want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. I don't really have anything on this. Elena, do you have anything?
Just a quick administrative note. I just wanted to apologize to the Toms. I know that I hadn't sent back the revised conditions, but I was just looking through them, and with a few minor exceptions, basically all of the edits that you had proposed sounded good. There were just a few that are standard conditions that we tend to keep in. And just for the commission, those are now in the project folder for Day Boulevard and Preble Circle.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, you showed a small stretch of guardrail. Is that guardrail on the beach side, did you say? Or is it on the park side of the roadway?
That is on the park side of the roadway, John.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And how many feet of that is? I mean, that's just that section, or is there like 1,000 feet of it?
It's definitely not 1,000 feet. Tom might be able to answer that better than I am. I think it's, just several hundred. It is just that section, if I recall. And I do want to mention that Tom is right. We are doing the sidewalk up to and through the State Police Barracks. It was the seasonal water line that was coming from the McCormick Bathhouse. So I apologize for breaking in there.
All right, that's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Linay?
I just had some comments on tree protection, not seeing a tree protection detail in the drawings. Also, the guardrail that Commissioner Sullivan just brought up. Could you talk about that detail? So are you installing new posts and footings? Because in that particular photo that you showed, it is pretty close to an existing tree. So just want to understand how you're minimizing the impact to that existing tree.
I can take this one, I guess. So they'll be pile drive. The posts that are there will be pulled out and new posts will be pile drive in the same hole. Tom did mention that there were some posts that were missing, but they're missing because they're broken off. There's still a piece in the ground. That piece will be removed and pile drive in that same location also. So no new guardrail will go in it where a guardrail wasn't, there before, so to speak.
Great. And will you add, wood slats or some snow fence around the trees to?
Yes, that's part of your order conditions, and Tom can speak to this a little more, but typical tree protection that, the stand-up tree protection that you guys put in your order conditions will be applied.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
About that. Yeah, no, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Conley?
Thank you, Chair Parker. Is this also an opportunity to plant some trees there?
That has not been considered, Commissioner. It's really more of a sidewalk maintenance contract. I'm not even sure that the trees, we're doing this with an existing maintenance contract that doesn't really have, tree planting in it. So it wasn't even considered.
Is it something that can be considered? Because you are removing pavement, as I understand, and you're going to turn that into permeable
you mean
space.
just in the Preble Circle area? I mean, I
Yeah.
guess we were removing. I don't want to speak for traffic and line of sights and stuff like that, but I mean, I personally have no problem planting trees there if operations and the parkway section has no problem with it.
Great, yeah, at least some dwarf trees. When we were looking at the aerial map, you said it's going to be more than the striped area and it's going to go over a sidewalk or something. I just didn't follow that comment.
No, it's the removal of asphalt is going to be the striped area only. So we're just removing that area and bringing it turning it into a vegetated island. If you want to pull the aerial up, I can kind of show you a little better. But there was a
Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, making sure. If I know the commissioners have their plan, the plans available to them with the PDF. But if you go to page 64 of the PDF, you'll get an idea what I mean of it's slightly extending over that striped area in the crosswalk.
Thank you, Tom.
And if you
I
would,
see.
I have it up and available if you just wanted to give me permission to share a screen.
No, I have the PDF. I can see it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Conan, anything else?
Just one last very quick question. Seasonal water line, that means the water line is permanent, but the water flows through it seasonally, correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you. That's it, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond,
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Herbst.
No questions, thanks.
Okay. Elena, anybody from the public?
I am not seeing any raised hands and nothing in the inbox either.
Okay, thank you. So I think that, Elena, standard conditions would provide the tree protection that Commissioner Linay is seeking, correct?
Correct, yep, that's in there.
Okay, okay. So I would entertain a motion to close the issue the order of conditions and close the hearing, and adding to the order of conditions that the applicant will explore the planting of trees. It was in the circle, if feasible.
So moved.
Give a second. Thank
Second.
you. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan.
Aye.
Commissioner Linay.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Conan.
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you in Charlestown sometime, Tom.
Take care now.
Okay, next item on the agenda is request for determination of applicability from VHB on behalf of the Massachusetts Port Authority for the proposed installation of the stormwater access vault within an existing paved roadway located at the perimeter road of Logan Airport in East Boston. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening, Madeline Sewell, Environmental Manager for Massport. I am joined this evening by Taylor Donovan, Environmental Scientist from VHB, and Megan Sheehan from Atkins Realis, the designer for the project. Also, Sarah Ray from Massport is joining this evening as well.
Great, thank you.
Just a quick note before I pass it to Taylor. This work is being conducted to improve safety and sampling access to meet our stormwater sampling requirements under Logan's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES stormwater permit. Under that permit, stormwater sampling is required at select outfalls, including the outfall in question along the perimeter road. And the current condition right now is that access to the end of that outfall pipe is a little bit treacherous, and particularly so because the sampling needs to be done during stormwater events. So it's usually raining. So this is a pretty small project, and what it's basically doing is creating an access point for our consultants to sample within the roadway itself, to increase, safety for them. So with that, I will pass it over to Taylor.
Great, thanks, Madeline. So yes, this is a request for a determination of applicability for the project as Madeline described. So if you could please go to the next slide. The project is located at Logan Airport, approximately near Taxiway C, and near the existing stormwater outfall A33, which you can see on the aerial image with the yellow star. As she also mentioned, the purpose of the project is to improve safety for those conducting stormwater discharge monitoring on the site at that, currently at that outfall. But the project proposes to install a new monitoring well for that monitoring. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit more of a close-up aerial of the site. So you can see in the dashed green line and the aerial image is the approximate wetland edge, and that's using the wetland GIS layer from MassMapper. To the north of the roadway, which is above the wetland edge, you can see kind of like a concrete square with a black circle in the middle. That's an existing feature that the pipe will connect to. But in terms of resource areas on the site, The entire portion of the limit of work is within land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is at elevation 13 feet nav D88 in this area, and the 100-foot buffer zone to the salt marsh. And again, that edge is outlined in the dashed green line. So the project is located within the existing roadway pavement in this area. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the LSCSF on the site is at elevation 13, and you can see the, well, I guess forgive me if you can't see it super well here, but the edge of marsh is approximately at or below elevation 6 feet. And the top of the grass, the extent of the grass you can see is around elevation 10 feet using those contour lines on the plans. And in the red square, you can see the approximate limit of work area. So this is a 100 square foot area of existing pavement, but this is just to give you a sense of where the resource areas fall with respect to the proposed work using this image. So next slide, please. So again, the proposed work is to install one new stormwater access vault within the paved surface of the roadway. All work will fall within the red square shown on the plan. Prior to any earth disturbance or work, there will be fiber rolls installed at the down gradient limit. So on that south side of the roadway, the contractor will saw cut the pavement and excavate material. They will install a doghouse manhole structure, and if you have any specific questions on this work, I will direct them to Megan after. But essentially, they'll excavate, install the structure over the existing pipe, and then backfill the trench and restore pavement. So there will be no change in elevation or grading or stormwater drainage as a result of the project. And again, it's 100 square feet of temporary impact as a result of this work. And next, I believe that's it. So if you have any questions, we are happy to answer.
Great. Thank you, Taylor. I don't have any questions. Just want to remind members of the public, if you wish to provide a public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. I don't have any questions. Elena?
We don't have anything either. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Nice to see Massport cares for their consultants, but I don't have any questions.
Huh. Okay.
We try. It's only
Commissioner-
probably 30 years, so.
Is that something we need to put in a special condition in the order of conditions or something? Be kind to your consultant.
Right.
Okay. Commissioner Linay?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson?
My only question was how I've never heard of a doghouse manhole before, but that's not really. That's more of a personal thing. So thank you.
Yeah. Learn so many things doing this job, don't you? Commissioner Conan?
Well, we were offered special expertise to explain that portion, so I'm curious too. So what is the purpose of that doghouse manhole structure here?
Sure. So a doghouse manhole is just a manhole structure that's built over the top of an existing pipe. So the pipe that we need to sample from is already in the ground, and you just place a structure over the top of it, and then you cut the top of the pipe to get access to it.
Do you actually physically go in, or how do you sample? How do you do the sampling?
No, they'll use it's essentially a cup on a stick. That's, you know, an oversimplification of it, but
A cup on a stick. Right.
Yes, it's something they used to reach in, but it's not terribly long, so it would be difficult. They would still have to climb down the rocks if we weren't to put this structure in place, but this will allow them to just reach down from the surface and sample in the vault.
Great, thank you. One quick question. Where is the 100 square foot of temporary impact? You can point on the proposed work
That's
aerial
what's
map.
shown in the red square.
Along the perimeter road. So is that a 10 by 10 kind of square?
Yes, and it's all within the existing pavement footprint.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
I just want to understand the same thing. Is that the only place where the water would be impacted?
So this red square is not touching the water. The water flows through that pipe, and then just below the green, you can see kind of a football shape. That's the outfall. That's the symbol that we're using for the outfall. And so the water flows through that pipe underground and out to the outfall. And then this structure will be installed over the top of the pipe, and it will extend up to the surface so that they can sample from the flat ground next to the structure instead of climbing down the rocks at the outfall edge.
So there, now I think I'm confused. Is there work that's being done within the storm flowage area?
So the whole site is mapped as land subject to coastal storm flowage. It's at elevation 13. And I believe the top of the roadway is around elevation 10. So technically, yes, but it will be pretty much restored in place after the completion of work. There will just be, instead of in that area where the manhole is going in, it'll be, you know, that the surface area of the manhole cover was asphalt and will now be the manhole cover.
So the reason for the request is to avoid filing an NOI?
So the purpose of the project is so that anyone doing the stormwater discharge monitoring doesn't have to navigate down to the outfall structure, which is shown like around the edge of that wetland, of that green line. By installing the structure, the monitors will just need to open up the manhole cover from the roadway and sample down from the road, as Megan kind of described. With it does look like a cup on a stick, so it's just safer for them. That's the purpose of the application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any public comments, Eleanor?
I do not see any hands raised. I don't see anything in the inbox either.
Thank you. So I would entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with the standard erosion control conditions.
So moved.
We have a second.
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 Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a request for a determination of applicability from Ty and Bond on behalf of the Boston Gas Company, DBA, doing business as National Grid, for the proposed replacement of 800 linear feet of existing gas mains with a single main between Columbia Road and William J. Day Boulevard at 1793 to 1849 on William J. Day Boulevard in South Boston. Who's here on behalf of the proponent?
Good evening. My name is Isabel Arthun Long. I'm a project environmental scientist with Ty and Bond. And it's just me tonight.
Okay. Floor is all yours.
Excellent. Thank you. So thank you for that introduction. This is a request for determination of applicability that is sort of an extension from a different RDA that the commission approved in 2023, so about a year ago. It's for gas main replacement work along William J. Day Boulevard. If we can go to the next slide here. This shows the full extent of the previously approved RDA, showing gas main replacement all through this area. What the story is that when they went to open up the road in Columbia Road, they found several unmapped customer service gas lines that went perpendicular through the median to William J. Day Boulevard. These were leak-prone pipes that needed to be replaced per mandate of the state of Massachusetts. by the end of the year. But unfortunately, they run underneath a DCR-owned median. And after several attempts at coordination with DCR, DCR found that it would require permitting under Article 97, which would take years to complete. So in order to access those customer service lines. So Boston Gas Company has instead proposed to abandon those pipes in place since they can't access them, and instead replace them with a single gas main that runs along William J. Day Boulevard between O Street and P Street. So if you go to the next slide, you can see that limit of work for this proposed project, just connecting from Columbia Road from the gas main that they are currently installing in that roadway and down to William J. Day Boulevard and back up to connect to Columbia Road, just to bypass those old customer service lines. The full extent of the work, as you can see, is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage at an elevation of 11 feet. If you go to the next slide, I just have a couple images for you here. You can see there's a gas mains going through the median here, perpendicular to these two streets. There are several of them on this block between O Street and N Street. You can go to the next. I unfortunately can't show you with my cursor, but you all, I believe, have the plans in front of you as well, hopefully, and maybe can see closer these lines going across. So instead, again, we're just proposing to put a single gas main along William J. Day Boulevard. All of the work will be confined to the paved roadway right of way. So thank you. These are a couple of images of the area at intersections of O Street and P Street, showing those two roads of Columbia Street and William J. Day Boulevard. And that's what I have for you. It's a very straightforward project, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the commission.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am looking at an email here regarding erosion controls. Elena, are we okay with erosion controls? And Isabel, thank you for the explanation there.
Yes. So I believe that we are all set with erosion controls, but we do generally still include that in the sort of standard erosion and sediment controls if the commission chooses to issue a negative determination.
Okay. Okay. And Isabel, regarding the Article 97 authorization, I would note, I don't know why it's so difficult. It only takes 2/3 vote of the legislature.
Right, right, simple.
Article 97. Yeah, that would definitely take years, if never. Okay. Elena, anything else on this?
We do not have anything else on this.
Okay, Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I noticed that you cross over an MWRA sewer line, and you got to get a permit from them to do that. They call it an 8M permit, and that can take you a little bit of time too. So rather than get caught by them and then get stopped, you might want to look into that tomorrow.
I'll confirm with the client that I'm sure they're aware of this, you know.
I deal with that client all the time. They may be aware of it, but they didn't call the authority yet. So why don't you have them do that? And the city of Boston had to do some sewer work coming out of that building, and they laid a new sewer line. It looks just about where your gas line is. So you might want to check the city of Boston and see where they put, there was something wrong with their sewers, and I'm not sure they didn't get it, Article 97 too. So
okay,
double check that you don't have a utility that you don't know about right where you're digging.
I'll certainly follow up with them about existing sewer lines.
And that's all I had.
Thank you.
Great advice, Commissioner Sullivan. Ironically, I just got a call late yesterday afternoon from a client looking for an MWRA assistance with an MWRA permit in the exact same situation. They had missed it. So, Commissioner Linay.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson,
None here either. Thank you.
Commissioner Conan,
Thanks, Chair Parker. Isabel, I know you can't use the cursor, but I couldn't actually follow the narrative completely. Can you maybe describe using the colors in the plan? Go back one more slide. Yeah, that one.
Yes. So the pink dashed lines are the proposed gas main installations, and everything, all work within Columbia Road is already authorized by the Conservation Commission. So we're looking at the pink line south of that in William J. Day Boulevard. And perpendicular to those two pink lines, there are several short gas mains that cross the median, and they have a G sort of inserted into the line. So, there's one, in this image, the leftmost line crossing the median, that's one of the gas mains. The next line is another one. Does that help orient you to the?
It does. The ones crossing are in black or gray, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, right. That's helpful. Thank you. So what is the total, either in terms of the length in feet or the square footage that'll be affected by the project? And it's digging too. I guess it's actually cubic footage. Could you give me a sense of the extent of the work?
Yes, let me just make sure I have those correct numbers in front of me here. So the work will result in approximately 1,600 square feet of temporary impacts. The trenches are 2 feet wide, or the trench is 2 feet wide, and that just accounts for the linear feet of gas main by a 2 foot wide area.
1,600 linear foot, you said, right?
800 linear feet, 1,600
800.
square feet.
1,600 square feet. Okay. Oh, so that's the 2. You're multiplying by that 2. And how deep?
Correct. The trenches will be 3 feet below ground surface.
I see. And do you know how that measures up against the flood levels?
So it's all within, below that 11-foot flood elevation. Are you asking, what the base of the trench?
Yeah,
the elevation of the base of the trench is? Let me see if I can pull up the elevation here. You'll have to forgive me, I'm not an engineer, so don't have as quick with project drawings. Apologies. Okay, let's see. Even in the cross sections.
Probably digging down 3 feet below roadway surface to put the pipe in.
That is the depth. I think that I'm being asked what the
11
elevation of the roadway is.
Yeah, it's probably 18 Boston City base. of 12.
18 and 12, big
Well,
difference there.
no, it's probably 18 Boston City based, 12 NAVD.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
12
yeah,
NAVD.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. So the reason I'm asking, this is a request for determination of applicability. It just seems like a huge area, huge volume, I should say, that involves digging. And if I have a good sense of how that compares to the flooding level, and Commissioner Sullivan's answer here gives me some sense. It'd be good to know if there is potential impact, right? Because it's not some trivial project. It's pretty significant project. And that's what it makes me uncomfortable to just say it's not applicable, and given that this is an RDA.
Sure, I understand. Trenches will be backfilled every day at the end of the day. That's National Grid standard practice. So, and of course, there won't be any permanent change in flood storage volume in this area. They expect the work to take less than a month because they have to have it finished by the end of the year.
And will it be filled to the same level of compactness of the current soil, or will it be more compact, or?
They'll be returning it to existing conditions. Or do you just mean at the end of the day?
Returning to existing conditions would be part of my question, but
Right.
I'm also thinking these are opportunities to make sure that if there is any vulnerability in these portions, that could be addressed as well as part of the project. That's
Right.
okay. Thank you. That's still helpful. I don't want to take too much time. The pipes that are in there that are going across the median, are they going to be, like, when you say abandoned, they're just going to be there?
They'll be capped and abandoned in place because they don't have access to work on those pipes or remove them.
Capped on both ends?
Correct.
Right. Thank you. That's all, Sir Parker.
Okay, Commissioner Richmond.
Yeah, I have a question about whether, given what Commissioner Sullivan said, that we're ready to vote on this. In other words, is it important to know whether there's a sewer pipe running exactly in the same place as where they want to build this?
Yeah, no, I think that what Commissioner Sullivan, and I won't speak for him, you can jump in, was issuing a caution that the proponent needs to make sure that they check locations of utilities. Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, that's all it is. I'm just giving a heads up. You got to get the permit and, just find out. You may even be able to see it. I don't even know if they permanently paved it yet. So they may see it in the street. Gas companies notorious for avoiding anything like that, except if they want to lay on top of water mains, which you've heard me complain about all the time. So,
I mean, I guess where I'm sort of stuck at the moment has to do with the comment made immediately before, which is that this is a pretty big project. And, I think we would just have more control over it and how it was done if it went on an NOI. And so I don't really, I guess this is a question for the applicant. Are you doing it this way because of the speed with which you need, or the National Grid needs to get this done?
Sure, I can answer that. There is an element of urgency. My client is under a mandate by the state to replace these types of pipes by the end of the year, and so there's already not enough time to complete that work by the end of the year, and so they're going to be rushing as it is, even if a determination was issued tonight. The other piece is the reason we submitted this as a RDA is because gas replacement work within the roadway right-of-way is considered an exempt activity under the Wetlands Protection Act. So we are bringing this to the commission basically to ask if you concur that this is a replacement, It is certainly a realignment because we're not able to replace in situ these pipes that are going across the median, but the length of pipe that's being replaced and the area it's serving is being replaced. And so we think it's arguable that in the spirit of that exemption, this is a replacement activity and could be considered exempt.
So
And Commissioner Richmond,
what-
when we issue, let me just break in for a second. When we issue our negative determinations of applicability, they are accompanied by conditions regarding erosion control that we would be conditioning if this was an NOI as well.
And would we be doing anything else besides that if this were an NOI?
Well, they get the entire order of conditions, but the ones that we would be really concerned about would be the sediment and erosion control conditions. We can put other conditions if you're thinking of another condition on the work here, but I frankly can't think of anything else that we'd want in this situation.
Okay, I guess my only question, and it, may not be dispositive of anything, but it's November. I mean, if they had to get this done by the end of the year, why are we getting this in November?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. The reason is that these customer service lines were unmapped. And so they weren't aware of them until they opened up the road in Columbia Road. Otherwise, this would have been included in the package that was submitted to the commission last year. And so between not knowing that these customer service lines existed and then, trying to coordinate with DCR to arrange for an in situ replacement across the median, that's pushed us to this late date.
Yeah, well, you're doing a great job for your client, I have to tell you, but the fact that they don't even know that they had the lines there is not comforting to me at all. But thank you for your response.
Okay, Commissioner Herbst.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I think we approve these really regularly as an RDA, so I don't have any concerns with this. And actually, to the extent they're replacing potentially leaky pipes, I'm quite glad for them to get it done. Thanks.
Agreed. Thank you. I just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment. Please raise your hand or type in the chat the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself. Send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. Elena, do you see any raised hands?
I do not see any raised hands and nothing in
Sure,
the inbox either.
Have a lot of people left at this hour. Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to issue a negative determination of applicability with the standard erosion control conditions.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that carries 7-0. Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, next item on the agenda, request for an extension to the original order of conditions issued for DEP file number 0061832, Boston file number 2021-056 from Niche Engineering on behalf of Seaport D Title Holder LLC for the proposed demolition of a parking lot and construction of a new building and underground parking garage located at 65 Northern Avenue /88 Seaport Boulevard in South Boston. Resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Elena, are we getting a presentation on this or a narrative?
I think we should be getting a presentation on the.
Okay.
Good evening, John.
There it is, I
Schmidt.
see it.
Yeah.
Hi,
Good
John.
evening, John Schmidt with Niche Engineering.
Yep.
And with me is Amy Prange from WS Development. We were before you about approximately 3 years ago, where we received an order of conditions for this proposed building and related improvements at 88 Seaport. Since then, we've been unable to get to the point where we can break ground. This is a series of market conditions code changes that require significant internal building redesign, especially related to the stretch codes and the energy code. And we're also working with the MBTA and getting an access permit for them. As you know, they're working on the head house that abuts our parcel, so we're sort of on a pause until that project is completed and we can go forward. So there's been a series of conditions that have prevented us to move into construction for this project. But during this time, once we got through the commission several years ago, we went to the Public Improvement Commission, and through their permitting process, they asked us to change what we had proposed as a private way into a plaza courtyard area. So in meeting with Elena a couple of weeks ago, she suggested that we come and describe those changes to the commission and as part of this extension request. So I'll turn this now over to Amy Prange, who will walk us through those changes.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you everyone for your time this evening. Next slide. So this is the previously approved plan that you guys saw in 2021. And this features Pierce Street, which was a street for cars. You can see the particular roadway with 2 public sidewalks with a street-lined tree. The next slide shows what we came up with after meeting with Boston Transportation and the BPDA several times. They suggested that we should be building a place for people and not a place for cars. So we came up with this plaza design. It's an improvement in our eyes, and I hope you guys agree. And I'll walk you through the planting changes in the next slide. The previously approved design had 14 trees, and the new plaza has 16 trees. There's a little bit more green space as well. We'll go from 789 square feet to 1211 square feet. We've diversified the tree species. The previous design only had swamp white oak. And we have 6 different trees in the new design. The shrubs stayed the same, but we've also changed the grasses based on what we know thrives well in the seaport, because they're all native species that are salt tolerant. And if you go through the next few slides, you can just flash through them. There's just images of the different plant species just for reference. And then here we just show a difference between the increase in pervious area from the original design Pierce Street to the plaza. We go up to 1211 square feet, and the darker green shows the pervious area that's in terra firma. The lighter green shows the planted beds that are over the garage, which is outlined in like a purple dashed line. Next slide. So the materials of the plaza, the pink area is a cobblestone paver. The yellow area is a cast in place concrete with exposed aggregate. The green dashed line is a trench drain. The stormwater management system is fully approved by BWSC. And the blue area is an asphalt walkway that really is just a blank canvas for some public art. So once it's built, we'll have an artist come in and do a mural in that whole blue area. Next slide. This is just an elevation. You can see the garage below pretty much the entirety of the plaza. And then if we want to flip through the next few slides, we just have some renderings. So this is from Northern Ave looking south towards Seaport Boulevard. This is in the plaza looking north towards Van Pier Green. This is in a seating area, kind of in the middle of the plaza. Another seating area. And then we have some views of what the mural could look like. We don't have an artist selected yet because it's not built, but something we're looking forward to. So yeah, it's a weird change to have to we basically fully designed the building and then changed the plaza, but I think at WS Development we are very excited about this new design. We think it'll fit better with the neighborhood, and we're always excited to build places for people. So
right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to remind members of the public to provide public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute yourself, or send your questions to staff via email at cc@boston.gov. I guess I don't really have any questions. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
So yeah, we did not have anything on this either. We were going to maybe go over the changes, but the team did a great job of that. So that made our job easier. And then yeah, timing wise, everything for the filing came in appropriately. So yeah, no further notes.
Great, thank you. That should have been my question. Yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Are you going to be able to build this within the 3-year extension?
It's likely we'll start and then we'll have to do another extension, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which we've had to do with a couple of blocks already in the Seaport.
Yep. Oh, that's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Linay?
I just had a couple questions about the landscape. I don't know if that's something that the team here can answer. Curious to know a little bit about the trees and paving, soils that are being specified for that. And then I think in that woodland planting image, I'm just curious, like, it looks like a seeded meadow, but is that where the perennials and ornamental grasses are being planted? And
Yeah, if you want to go back to maybe the 5th slide or the 3rd slide. I guess these views are good. The perennials and the shrubs are in those raised planting beds. It's like surrounded by corten, and there'll be wooden benches. So the southern planted area is this raised bed to try to get some more soil for the trees, because and to try to raise the trees up so we have some more the district hall's meeting spaces are right beyond this view. You can look into them right here. We wanted to provide some more privacy for the meeting spaces from the public plaza. And then the trees in the distance in the northern end of the plaza, those are in kind of more of a structural soil over the garage. And that's where that the cast in place concrete is. And then we have those pretty large stainless steel grates surrounding the trees. We can get access to the roots.
Great, thank you.
But yeah, I'm happy to share the planting plans and the soil plans with you if you have further questions.
I'm just curious, but that's great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Yeah, no, this is an exciting change. I like your use of the force perspective there too, which is like, hopefully it makes it feel like a bigger space.
Yeah.
I was just curious in terms of like, is this still available for like vehicular access, sort of Nerf style or whatnot, or
Yes.
is that no longer envisioned?
So we still have driveway entrances on both sides at Northern Ave and Seaport Boulevard, mostly to bring like trucks in for events and also maintenance for the building. It still exists as Pierce Street in our PDA. So in the future, if the city feels like this wants to be a street instead of a plaza, it's easily changed. And that was another reason why we chose asphalt down the middle, just in case we needed to bring a car through here. But we were this change came up between new business and public hearing for PIC. So we already had the driveway entrance in there. We just kind of kept it.
Okay. Yeah, so like the vehicular loading over top of like the
Yeah.
garage was baked in, but
Yeah.
all of the stuff you're putting on top is all, fire truck compatible type of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
The only other question I had was like sort of like, I know WS Development's been doing a bunch of work down there. This redesign is sort of baked in some of those lessons learned in terms of wind burn on the trees, the amount of irrigation, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the reasons why we chose those big giant tree grates that you see there, because we want access to the root balls. And a lot of the perennials and the grasses, the ones that were originally specified, we actually learned don't do great in the seaport. So we have a whole different mix now. So we baked in a lot of lessons learned.
Okay. And then I don't know if I've seen the like triple stemmed trees like that down there. I know I've seen them all over Kendall Square. But are there any examples in terms of like how they've performed, or I'm just curious?
Yeah, there's some birch trees that went in with District Hall in 2013
Oh,
on the
wow. Okay.
east side
All right.
of District Hall, and they still look great.
Fantastic. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Conan.
Thanks, Chair Parker. Why don't the perennials do well?
So the ones that failed, they were really, they didn't respond well to the wind. I would say they were not sturdy enough for the winds that we see in the seaport. So the ones that we picked are more sturdy, and they also have more of a visual interest. They're not just green. They have, different flowering things throughout the year.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it seems very exciting as a place for people to hang out and walk. I didn't quite understand like the multi-purpose of allowing vehicular access on this space. Is that like a future possibility, or is definitely part of the plan?
It would just be periodically if we were going to set up for a major event.
I see.
Yeah.
Like the truck with event material or whatever for
Yeah,
for it.
it would just load and then unload. Or if we had to do some maintenance on the building, there's space to get up close to the building. There's still kind of a sidewalk that exists on the 88 Seaport building side, but also on the District Hall side for maintenance.
Thanks. And you also have asphalt/stone paving here. Which one is it?
Yeah, so if you go, my slide 10, if you go back a few slides,
Is it one of the renderings, or is it?
Well, so this area right here that you see, sorry, if you go back.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So you can see where the trees are that we're looking at now. Sorry. And that tree area kind of in the foreground, that's in a whole cast in place concrete area. The trees come up out of that area with tree grates. And then you can see the darker gray is a cobblestone paver. And then the area that's purple, that's not over the paver, that's the asphalt.
Right. In the materials diagram, you have indicated that it could be asphalt or stone paving. Is that correct, or am I reading it?
Yeah, so you see how the mural kind of spans two materials.
Right.
It goes, so the mural spans over two materials, but primarily within if you're looking at the materials diagram, within the green rectangle, that's asphalt, and then it comes out over the stone pavers where it meets the public sidewalk.
Oh, I see. So you have both.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Any reason why it couldn't just be stone? And this is just me trying to understand what the need for asphalt is here.
To be honest, we're painting it, and it's kind of a shame to paint an expensive material. So we thought asphalt made the most sense.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Commissioner Richmond?
I don't have any questions. I love honest answers.
Thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say this now. We've had a lot of conversation about it, but I'm fine with the extension, but I feel like this really should be an amendment. I mean, you're changing from a road to a plaza. You can see how many questions we've had. I mean, I hate to be bureaucratic that way, but I think it goes quite a bit beyond just, hey, letting you know there's a few things different. I'm open to what the commission thinks. That's my perspective. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Ellen, anybody from the public?
We do not see any hands raised. And also nothing in the inbox. And I will say that I think that staff was on the fence about whether or not this needed to be an amendment. So Commissioner Herbst, if you think that that would be more appropriate, and if any of the other commissioners think that that would be more appropriate, we can certainly send the team resources on what that process would look like.
I'd like to move on, get a 3-year extension. Be done with it.
Is that a motion?
No, that's not January.
Okay, so I'll throw it up for a jump ball here. I'll entertain a motion to issue a 3-year extension to the order of conditions. Does someone make that motion?
So moved.
I'll second it because I don't oppose extending it. I just think they owe us an amendment separate from this. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan? Commissioner Conan? You're on mute.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Richmond?
Aye, and I agree with Commissioner Herbst.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay. There have been a number of continuances. Continued have been notice of intent for DEP file number 0061961 and Boston file number 2023-051 and notice of intent for DEP file number 0061996 and Boston file number 2024-021. And with that, we will begin our regular meeting. First item on the agenda is a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP file 006. Excuse me, 0061814 and Boston file number 2021-041 from Fort Point Associates on behalf of MCP3 Foundry LLC for the renovation of an existing building and demolition and reconstruction of a second building located at 1 Aubon Pond Way and 3 Anchor Way in South Boston. Resource areas land subject to coastal storm flowage. Eleanor, what do you have on this?
Yeah, so if the commission will recall, this was on the agenda at the last hearing, and we had a few outstanding items that we were still waiting for the team to resolve. Those items have been resolved. We've conducted a follow-up site visit, and we would recommend issuing a certificate of compliance with perpetual maintenance conditions for conditions number 26, 47, and 84 from the original order of conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, so with that, I would entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance for DEP file number 0061814, Boston file number 2021-041 with the perpetual conditions that Elena has testified to. Please.
Sorry.
So moved.
Moved.
Someone. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
Commissioner Linay?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Conan?
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond?
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst?
Aye.
And I vote aye. That carries 7-0. Okay. Next item on the agenda, administrative updates. Eleanor, what do you have for us?
So we have a few administrative updates. The first one is for an emergency certification, which was processed for a request that we had received. There was a dock that had collapsed into the water at 220 Victory Road, which is where that large National Grid sort of colorful looking tank is. And we conducted a site visit. It is, in fact, collapsed into the water. And we received all the proper documentation stating that this had the potential to be a public safety hazard if the right storm hit and if the right conditions hit. And so we processed this as an emergency certification, and the request and then the emergency cert itself is in the drive folder for the commission's review. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Okay. I don't have any. Does anybody else? Okay, so that I'd entertain a motion to ratify the emergency certification regarding the collapsed pier at Commercial Point LNG 2020 Victory Road in Dorchester. There's a Celtics game on, guys.
So moved.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbst,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Thank you. Elena, what's next?
Okay, so then next up, we have another item that we are requesting just feedback on, and happy to answer any questions. We processed an administrative approval for path improvements on Jamaica Way Path. We have both the request and the approval, which we sent with some conditions attached, included in the drive folder for the commission's review. And again, happy to answer any questions about that.
Okay. And good, I see that you added some special conditions, quite a few of them, actually.
Yes,
Okay,
just in case.
I don't have any questions. Anyone else?
Nope.
Okay. And we don't have to take action on this, correct?
Sorry, yeah,
Because
I
administrative approval.
yes, I started that as an action item and it isn't necessarily one, barring the request for any questions.
Okay, anything else?
Last item is something that should have already been in all of your inboxes, but we have put together our calendar of filing deadlines and site visit dates and hearing dates for 2025. We believe that we have avoided most conflicts, but if you have taken a look at that and seen anything that jumps out to you as potentially being an issue, please let us know. But we are planning on publishing that on the website and making sure that it's included in our next email that we send out to the listserv, because we've already gotten a few inquiries from folks who are looking to file in the new year and are just curious about timelines.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions on the schedule?
Nope.
Next item on the
No,
agenda
only thing
is,
usually like,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's just like the other, like additional religious holidays, but I feel like the city's gotten better at that over the past few years.
We had included all of those in our calendar when we were looking at dates, and believe that we have avoided most, if not all of them.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so last item on the agenda is acceptance of the meeting minutes. We have October 2nd, 2024 ready. Do I have a motion to accept those meeting minutes?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay. Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Linay,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Conan,
Aye.
Commissioner Richmond.
I wasn't present, so I'm not gonna vote.
Okay. Commissioner Herbst.
Aye.
And I vote aye, so that carries 6 ayes, 1 abstention. Okay, with that, motion to adjourn by acclamation. Do we have any objection? Thank you, everyone. And there's my commute in the morning. The Rita, very nice. I love this picture. Okay, I wish I got out early enough to take it back home. So,
I was gonna say, it's looked like that for 34 days in a row, right?
yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Okay, everybody have a good night.
Good
Thank you
night.
all.
You too.
Have a good night.